There was a once great, now defunct, independent bookstore in San Francisco. I was the poetry buyer. If you shopped the poetry section of that store, the titles you browsed were the ones I chose to be on the shelves. Many informed shoppers felt my section had the best selection in the city. Classics of most traditions were represented, as were contemporaries of every school. If you would think to look for a poet's work, I had thought to include it. The store went all in for the first National Poetry Month with a 20% off sale. 4 large signs, favorite poems of the staff, hung from a crossbeam in the center of the store. A dozen smaller signs, other favorites, hung on every wall. There was a table pyramided with poetry titles set where the store bottlenecked into a second room. No customer could miss it. Fiction, children's, all the store's most popular sections could only be reached by passing the poetry sale table. The books I set on that table were seen, browsed, sold. Poetry, for that 1 month of that year, held a tremendous pride of place. Several times, I saw 2 of my coworkers fill the empty spaces of the displays, even replace the titles chosen by others by scouring the poetry section without opening a single book. Both women were, like almost all Americans, prose readers. One of these co-workers I knew to be a Mary Oliver fan. Why were they working their way through the poetry section, spine by spine, tipping the occasional book out, glancing at the back cover, putting it back, or taking it to a display? I asked. I was told. They were looking for ethnic-sounding names, especially female. If unsure of a name, they were looking at author photos and bios for skin color or clues to sexual preference. Race and sex verified, they proudly took their chosen melanin and gonads to display where the store had, for this 1 month, thought to promote poems. I objected to prigs shoving an art that is not theirs back to the margins of the culture. I objected to booksellers or anyone recommending books to readers based entirely on the author's ethnic-sounding name. The books they chose gathered dust. Even readers who support multiculturalism and feminism will not purchase, read, and love a book that offers no more than a pat on the back for a charitable choice. Books are loved for their words, not their author photos. It was in cynical reaction to this experience that I briefly used a pen name in submissions to poetry journals. Mal Dom was a name I adopted in elementary school when I learned my initials spelled a famous person's name. My poems normally received rejections, sometimes a note. The first submission sent under a pseudonym resulted in a phone call from the journal's famous editor. The message could not have been clearer or more disturbing for anyone who values literature. He asked me what type of name Dom is. My second microcosmic event, also National Poetry Month, came with our annual Poetry for the People open mic. We invited the public to share their favorite poem. I had long since turned against the ego dump of traditional open mic readings. I love poetry, and I hate the boredom and frustration of being drenched in a downpour of egos. At our favorite poem night, classics were shared, contemporary poems were shared, discoveries were shared. Any poetry lover could share a great poem with an audience that came to listen. Everyone attended for the love of poems, except one person. That would-be rock star was an open mic traditionalist, a capitalist climber hawking the socialism that sells, competing for the job title poet. With millennia of the world's poems to choose from, the wannabe's favorite poem, he announced proudly, was the one he'd written the night before. He proceeded to impose it on us all. Our listeners did not shuffle about the room, go for coffee or the bathroom, or histrionically gesture in their chairs as they practiced for their own turns. Nor had our audience gone home and left empty chairs once their own turns had passed. The listeners at our favorite poem night tried, visibly tried, politely tried to listen. The fool read one dull poem for 20 minutes.